In this program, we will talk to you about how communication relates to the marketing effort of an organization. As you are aware, that the purpose of communication is to develop understanding. And if there is a misunderstanding, we say that there is a failure in communication. In marketing, the purpose of communication becomes far more focused in terms of what to say, whom to say, where to say, when to say. These questions relate to the identification of target audience, identification of communication objectives or goals, evaluation of media options, and identification of best possible media vehicles, and lastly, the contents of the message, both in terms of its verbal contents, also the visuals, which we call symbols of communication. In this program, an effort has been made to specifically cover the following issues: the relevance of communication in an organization, the interface between consumer and communication, the role of research in communication planning, that is identification of target audience, identification of communication objectives, and lastly, the understanding of consumer behavior and the consumer's buying motives. These issues are discussed with you by Mr. Prakash Tandon, who is a legendary figure from the Indian corporate sector. Mr. Prakash Tandon started his career in 1937, about 60 years ago, in the field of marketing, advertising, and marketing research. 22 years later, he came in the finance stream and thereafter rose to the top positions in the Indian corporate sector. For example, he was the chairman of Hindustan Labour Limited. He was also the chairman of State Trading Corporation of India, and thereafter the Director General of National Council for Applied Economics and Research. Let us now hear from Mr. Prakash Tandon regarding his views on communication and how communication relates to the marketing effort in an organization.
The communication will consist of study and understanding, understanding of need, understanding the nature of that need, whether it's felt or unfelt need, going through the process of fulfillment of that need, and then measuring the level of satisfaction from the fulfillment, which is very important. How satisfied was the consumer in having fulfilled that need? And fulfillment is not, satisfaction is not only immediate, like the end of a meal, but a bit long-term also. And in the end, he comes to the question, what does the consumer need? What should the consumer be needing? And he creates a whole range of things. Now, here comes in a very interesting additional responsibility that I would like to add to the consumer, for the communicator. The communicator should not only look to the fulfillment and the satisfaction of the need, but also whether there is a moral value involved, ethical value. Or is he creating unethical needs or fulfilling needs unethically? Now, it's a subtle point. I'd like to go to some basic principles. As information grows more important than products, and information becomes the greatest service, the communicator is going to be a very important person. Now the question is, what do we call him? Advertiser, market researcher? or anything you like. Now, these three set themselves a task. And the task to me is, for the manager, the following. First, the creation of knowledge. Second, to create from that knowledge product or a service. Third, to move from that product and communicate the knowledge of that product, include service in the product, upwards to production, to communicate the knowledge of the product to the universe, the consumer universe and the non-consumer universe, and then go back. The task of supply has been done, but then begins the next task, to find out from the user, the consumer of that product and service, as to what do they think of that product and service. Do they like it? Would they like to improve upon it? Have they any suggestions to make? And then bring them back again to the producer, the marketing man, and all those, to say that the consumer would like it differently. And then start the process again. So that the communicator, in a manner of speaking, is informing the producers, informing the consumers, linking them with a bridge, and travels it both ways, towards the consumer and back. In the years to come, there will be independent functions in the economy. Those who will only create knowledge, and joining this with Peter Drucker, who said we are moving into the knowledge world, that those who will be creators of knowledge, and knowledge can be scientific, philosophical, humanities, and that, creators of knowledge, call them researchers and developers. Those who will be producing products from that knowledge, the producers, the manufacturers, the makers, those who will be marketing those, and those who will be financing that. So maybe there will be companies in different areas, each doing its own function. In other words, the production company will be producing it, not wasting its time on researching or marketing. And there will be the communicators, along with the logistics people who take the products, if it's a physical product, but they will be called the communicators. Now, a very important underlying thing behind communication to my mind is, when you say that I go to the consumer and find out what does he want, what does he like, to me there are needs of the consumer at two levels, the felt needs and the unfelt needs. The felt are those that he wants. He is conscious, mentally, physically conscious. But the unfelt needs are those that he doesn't want, and you have to create them. And if you can create an unfelt need and cater to the consumer, he gladly says, yes, I'll be very glad to take it. In fact, most production product advancement takes place by studying his unfelt needs. Now, I don't know how to define unfelt needs. This is something that you have to study and find out yourself. So therefore, market research. Incidentally, I ran into one of our first, most amusing discoveries about the Indian woman, which I think is worth relating here. Our questionnaire asked naturally, what's the soap you use, toilet soap? And let's say she said, Lux, or any soap. The next question was, who chooses the soap you use? And then who buys the soap you use? In other words, the whole range of what do you use, how do you choose, or who chooses, And then who does the buying? Buying was interesting or important because when you went to the market, you saw other brands too, and you may change your mind if only out of curiosity or price competitiveness. So that was equally important. In the very first week, the answers came, and my English teacher, Thompson Walker, stood back at an issue. He said, because this I don't understand. Husband chooses, husband buys. How can the husband choose a toilet soap that she uses? And how does the husband go buying soap? I said, well, in India, men do the shopping at that time. Very few women went out shopping, except down south in Kerala and there. But in Bombay, and particularly in Lahore and these places, north, it was the men who did the shopping. He said, all right, I accept that, but husband chooses, I don't understand. I said, well, our woman in the home is a gentle, submissive type. She is the kind of Griha Lakshmi in the home. She leaves all the choices to the god, the man. I became a little eloquent, a little too eloquent. He said, no, I have done enough research in most countries to know that she must have something in the choice. I don't accept this man chooses. So then he taught me open-ended research. So he called one of our senior girls, Ada Rodriguez, and said, Ada, next time you come across this answer, husband chooses, put your questionnaire down and have an open-ended interview and say, well, or whatever language he was using, toilet soap has a perfume, it has a color, it has a smoothness. Don't you like to use the soap you like? Don't you like to choose that? After all, there's so many soaps in the market. So when Ada came back in the evening, so Thompson Walker said, now first let's get down, Ada, not to the day's questionnaires, but that was the answer to the open-ended interview. Or she said the answer was very simple. I didn't have to ask many women. Because the very first woman I asked, I said, but madam, don't you? Oh, she said, no, I understand. I tell the husband what to choose. Now there we learned something very interesting, and I did. That who chooses, who decides, who is the decision maker? Not the very simple generalization. The last point I'd like to make, that in this consumerist society, where you are creating needs, not unfelt needs or felt needs, but creating negative needs, needs that you don't need to fulfill, or needs that you don't have. I'll give an example. A woman goes to the store to buy a dress. Right? She looks around and she buys a dress. And she comes home and says, well, I've done my mind to your husband. That's good. Let's see what you bought and so on. A week later, she tells him, oh, I bought an old new dress. Oh, what happened? And she said, well, passing by, there was a sale. And would you believe it that this dress only cost 40% of the normal value? When would I ever get a value like this? So I bought it. And the husband said, but did you need it? Oh, no, it's not a question of needing it, but when will I ever get a chance to buy again like this? Now you're fulfilling a need in a very strange manner. Mainly because it's lying not inside the shop. Because inside the shop, you've got to have the volition to go inside to do buying, and you don't need to, because you want a dress. It's done outside, and it's also done, displayed in a manner which is a throwaway manner. You know, just pick it up and pay inside. And then the question comes in, that are we creating, like the drug, like sex, like all that, needs that have been well fulfilled, but these are beyond the area of fulfillment.
Let's now summarize what we learned in this program. To start with, we learned about the relevance of communication in an organization. Secondly, we learned about the relevance and interface of communication with consumers. Thirdly, we learned about the role of research in communication planning, more specifically in terms of identification of target audience, in terms of identification of bound motives, and also the communication objectives. Lastly, we learned in this program about the role of communication in terms of consumerism. We hope that this program has helped you in understanding the role of communication in the marketing efforts of an organization.